What about you, buddy? You're from another planet, aren't you?
Who is John Hancock? In the film, we're not given any real information about his past. We know almost nothing about his life, just like he doesn't. For him, it all started in 1931. In a dark alley, he tried to protect someone, but took a heavy blow to the head. His skull was fractured, and when he came to, he was lying in a hospital bed, his memory completely gone. A nurse handed him a form and asked him to leave his John Hancock. That's an informal term meaning leave your signature. But how would someone who's lost all memory know that? The poor guy didn't even know his own name. So he decided that was it. His name was John Hancock. We learn a bit more from Mary, Hancock's former wife. But even she constantly lies or avoids giving straight answers. Naturally, I thought all the answers might be hidden in the original script of the film. But surprisingly, there's no Mary at all in that first version. And John Hancock is simply the last and only immortal left on Earth, dreaming of just one thing, to die. So who is Hancock? According to some versions, there were 6 brothers and 6 sisters, Titanites, created in pairs throughout different ages. They had different names over time: Titans, gods, angels, Ameshaspentus, saints, immortals when free, and mortal when in love. Without even realizing it, Hancock has been drawing his past everywhere, on whatever he could get his hands on, and most of his story is captured on the walls of his prison cell. My name is Evgeny, and today we're diving into one big question. Who is Hancock? I promise, this will be interesting. Let's begin. Just a quick 10-second moment of your attention. Please make sure to support the channel and don't forget to subscribe to it. Thank you. So, to begin with, we need to sum up all the information we have from the director's cut of the film. Using the original script makes no sense. It doesn't contain a single line about Hancock's backstory. That's why we'll focus only on the film itself and Hancock's own words about his past. His first memories of his life start from waking up in an intensive care unit. He had a serious head injury and complete memory loss. A nurse told him that he had saved someone from a group of thugs. He had no documents, no ID, just a piece of chewing gum in his pocket and a movie ticket for the film Frankenstein. Later, they asked him to leave his John Hancock. This phrase appeared in the early 19th century. John Hancock was an American politician, a merchant, and one of the leaders of the American Revolution. He became famous for being the first to sign the United States Declaration of Independence in 1776, and for doing so with a huge, bold, and easily readable signature. According to legend, Hancock made his signature so large so that King George III could read it without his glasses. Over time, Americans started jokingly saying, "Leave your John Hancock," when asking someone to sign something. Since Hancock in the film had no idea what that expression meant, he decided that this was his actual name, John Hancock. Over time, the name stuck, and he kept it. There's also one more important detail. The first Frankenstein film came out in 1910. Based on this, we can assume that Hancock's memory loss could have happened around that time. And after all, Mary herself mentions that they separated 100 years ago.
What?
We broke up decades ago, long before you were born.
However, there's reason to believe that this actually happened in 1931. First of all, if you look closely at the ticket, you'll see the name of the theater, Biograph Theater, which showed the 1931 version of the film. The 1910 version, on the other hand, was distributed by Edison Studios Theaters. There's also another detail. In the 1931 film, the role of Frankenstein was played by Boris Karloff, and Hancock himself mentions this directly.
Boris Karloff.
So it turns out that Hancock's memory loss most likely happened in 1931. The second important piece of information comes from Mary. During their conversations, both in the trailer and later at her house, she explains that in the past, she and Hancock were a married couple, and their relationship lasted for around 3,000 years. In different eras, they had different names and were called by different terms. How many of these gods once existed, we don't know. But according to Mary, she and Hancock are the only ones who survived to modern times. She says they were created in pairs, so no matter where they were, a chain of events would always lead them back to each other. However, during the conversation, it's clear that Mary isn't telling the whole truth. At first, she calls Hancock her brother. Later, she refers to them as opposites. And at one point, she even claims that she's much stronger than him, which is clearly a lie.
I'm stronger.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
During their argument, even more details about their abilities are revealed. Mary has the power to control the weather. She can summon snowstorms and tornadoes. Hancock, on the other hand, can release lightning. Interestingly, the first hints of these powers appear during their very first meeting. In the house, the temperature suddenly rises, making Ray think someone turned the heating back on.
Look at that, huh? Is the heat on?
When Hancock and Mary come into close contact, the temperature rises so much that popcorn literally starts popping in the house. Another important detail is Hancock's unexplained connection to eagles. This symbol appears everywhere around him. The eagle is pictured on his beanie, on his pendant, in his drawings that show up more than once, and even as part of his superhero suit. By the end of the film, an actual eagle is seen sitting next to Hancock, almost like a sign or a guardian. All of these small details have become the basis for a popular theory that in the past Hancock was none other than Zeus himself, the king of the ancient Greek gods, and Mary was his wife, Hera. It actually makes sense. Like Hancock, Zeus controls lightning, and his eternal companion, his sacred bird, was the eagle. This connection is also supported by Hancock's drawings, where lightning and eagles appear repeatedly. In other words, in his past, the eagle was his constant companion, and lightning was an inseparable part of his powers. If you look carefully at one of the drawings, you can even spot Hancock standing at the entrance of an arch. Most likely, it's Hadrian's Arch in Athens. Sometimes it's referred to as the gateway to the Olympian. As for the goddess Hera, she had power over weather and nature. Some legends even say she could summon storms and control the elements, which is exactly what we see Mary doing in the film. She was also known as the goddess of fate, though Mary herself claims she doesn't believe in fate.
I've lived for a very long time, Ray. And the one thing I learned, fate doesn't decide everything.
There's something else worth noticing. Mary constantly wears rings, hoop earrings, bracelets, and a pendant. In mythology, Hera, the goddess of marriage and family, was historically associated with rings as symbols of union and loyalty. This adds to the idea that in the past they really were ancient Greek gods, but that's just a small part of their shared story, the period when they were a married couple. Mary admits that their marriage wasn't a happy one. She kept leaving Hancock, but no matter where she went, he always found her. They kept drawing each other back, like two halves of the same whole. Hoping to break this endless cycle, Mary chose to leave him when he lost his memory, believing it was the only way to avoid yet another accidental reunion. However, there's one more strange detail: Hancock's drawings. This is likely a post-traumatic reaction. People suffering from amnesia often try to visualize fragments of their past to recover lost memories. But Hancock doesn't draw Mary. Instead, he keeps drawing himself and a child holding his hand. You can spot these drawings on napkins or even scratched onto the walls of his prison cell. In some of his sketches, an eye appears. Most likely, it's the all-seeing eye, a symbol often linked to divine observation or the eye of God. Much more rarely, we see the image of a horse. It shows up both on the walls of his cell and in Hancock's home. And in some drawings, he depicts himself surrounded by a halo or radiating lines of light. Since Mary mentions not only Greece but also Persia, it's possible that at some point in another part of the world, Hancock might have been associated with the god Mithra. This god was often depicted surrounded by light or rays shining from his body. The horse also held sacred meaning in Mithric myths. In his cult, the horse often accompanied the god as a symbol of strength and sacrifice. But perhaps the most interesting detail we see on the walls of Hancock's prison cell is the drawing of a pyramid. This clearly points to the fact that during another period of his long life, Hancock was connected to ancient Egypt. Most likely, he was known as Horus, the ancient Egyptian god of the sky and sun, often depicted as a falcon or a man with the head of a falcon. This fits Hancock's superhero image perfectly, especially considering his eagle symbolism, his connection to the sky, and his ability to fly. We don't know exactly when John Hancock was born. All we know is that his union with Mary lasted for around 3,000 years. But it's possible that beings like them were created by God or by some higher power to help humanity. Maybe they've existed since the very beginning of mankind, so it's not surprising that their images eventually became part of the myths and legends of different cultures and eras. And there's one more thing we can be pretty sure of. The pyramids in Egypt could very well have been built by Hancock. Using his strength, he could have constructed such monumental structures incredibly fast. But all of this still doesn't explain the main mystery. Who is the child Hancock keeps drawing? Who is that child holding his hand? And now it's the right moment to turn to the history of the film's creation, because that's where we can actually find some answers. The first version of the script was written by Vince Gilligan, the creator of Breaking Bad. Back in the mid-90s, the concept was much darker. The main character was a superhero alcoholic who had lost his purpose, destroyed everything around him, and suffered from crushing loneliness. The script floated around Hollywood for years, seen as an unconventional adult superhero film. The project was rewritten several times and offered to different studios. In 2005, Columbia Pictures took it on. That's when Peter Berg joined the project as a screenwriter and eventually became the film's director. The material was softened. What started as a purely depressing story was transformed into more of a comedy, mixed with drama and superhero action. That's also when the character of Mary was added. In the original concept, Hancock was the only immortal left on Earth, and ironically, he was trying to end his own life. He had attempted hundreds of ways to kill himself. In the end, he simply gave up and drank himself into oblivion. Finally, Hancock was released in 2008 with a production budget of around $150 million. The film earned nearly $630 million at the box office, becoming one of the highest-grossing films of the year. Before the film's release, director Peter Berg said that if the movie performed as expected, a sequel would most likely follow. And after Hancock was released on DVD and Blu-ray, actor Will Smith confirmed that he would return for the sequel. He told fans that they were about to discover an entire world, and that people would be very surprised by the new world of Hancock. In 2009, Adam Fierro and Glenn Mazzara started working on the script for the sequel, with Peter Berg himself helping them. Even in the first film, Berg had planted clear hints that Hancock had a child, but due to his amnesia, the hero simply doesn't remember, even though he repeatedly draws a child in his sketches. In other words, when making the first film, the director already had the idea of a sequel in his head. That's why he left clues in the form of Hancock's drawings. In 2010, Berg revealed that a new character would appear in the sequel, a young girl with powers similar to those of Hancock and Mary. Around that time, fans quickly figured out that this would most likely be the daughter of Hancock and Mary. Later, part of the script leaked online, revealing that Mary didn't want her daughter to die. And this became the main reason why she left both Hancock and their child. The plot of the sequel was moving in the direction of a family drama. Most likely because of this leak, the film was delayed indefinitely. In 2019, the director announced that the script would be completely rewritten and the story changed. The film was supposed to dive much deeper into superhero mythology, but once again, the project ran into trouble. First, the working title of the sequel leaked, Hancock and the Horsemen of the Apocalypse. Later, part of the new script surfaced as well, and that's where we learn that gods like Hancock were originally sent to Earth by their creator to help humanity. In the very beginning, there were 6 brothers and 6 sisters, 12 titans, whose purpose was to protect mankind. Naturally, their images became the basis for myths and religions. Most likely they had children, but as the years passed and humanity evolved, the need for the titans faded, and their presence slowly disappeared from the world. That's why they began to be drawn to each other, forming pairs and eventually dying like ordinary mortals, all except for Mary and Hancock. In the planned 2012 sequel, it was revealed that not all 12 titans were good. At some point early in their shared history, 4 of the titans broke away from the group. They had grown disappointed in humanity and abandoned their main mission, to protect and help people. Their names had long been forgotten, and Mary genuinely believed those titans were dead. But in reality, they had simply gone into hiding, watching humanity from the shadows and choosing not to interfere. Something, however, was meant to happen that would force these four to return, with the intention of destroying the Earth, and Hancock and Mary would stand as humanity's last defense. This plot was directly connected to the prophecy from the book of Revelation, the apocalypse from the New Testament. The four horsemen of the apocalypse symbolize the disasters that, according to Christian eschatology, precede the end of the world. They are traditionally known as plague, war, famine, and death. Personally, I think that idea sounds pretty interesting, but because of the actors' busy schedules, production was pushed to 2015. In the end, though, filming never started. The official reason was never confirmed. Some say that Will Smith demanded too high of a salary. Others believe that after the success of Marvel and DC, the superhero market quickly became oversaturated with massive franchises, and the studio decided that competing with them would be too expensive and too risky. In my opinion, it was a combination of factors, constant scheduling conflicts, and the actors being tied up in other projects that ultimately killed the sequel. But in February 2025, actor Will Smith announced that a sequel to Hancock is once again being discussed in Hollywood, and he said he's open to returning to the role of the superhero. Soon after, rumors began to spread that actress Zendaya is being considered for the second lead role. She would play the daughter of Hancock and Mary, a character with the same superpowers as her parents, which means the sequel will likely be based on the 2009 script. Who will direct the film and when production will actually begin? There's no information yet, but I'd personally love to see this story continue. And what about you? Are you waiting for Hancock too? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.